Hey everyone, we're back. Past the pilot. I think it's episode 5. We had some weeks of vacation time in between, so now we're back with the amazing Johnny McFadden and myself, Stefan. And Johnny, today we have a topic we want to jump right into, which is super fascinating because it's been out there for a long time. It's a way for to deal with a situation where you wouldn't have APIs available or any connectivity into a system, but you still have a website that you want to automate the usage of. So, and there's traditional ways and there's new ways, but not everything, of course, is as golden as it seems. So there's some problems with that. We want to elaborate on that. And then we're going to figure out how Vertesia is solving this problem. So I think the first one, Johnny, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called robotic process automation. Is that right?
Yes, yes, and this is something that I have a little bit of experience with in a past life where um, I built RPA, robotics process automation workflows, and they were great at the time because that was what was available, and they were automation tools. The problem is they're very deterministic, and so you mentioned right browsing the web, for example. Um, well, the way you would do something in with RPA tools is everything gets anchored to something on the web page. So you basically tell the bot, if you want to call it that, this is the web page. This is exactly what it looks like, right? There's a div tag here and there's a button right here, and it's going to have this relation. And you're going to click that button, and then you're going to, do this. You're going to then click this part, and you're going to fill in this text. So it's mimicking what humans could do on the web. But if anything changed, and I mean anything changed, it would completely break the process. And so there were ways around that. So you could have like if statements. So if this right, if this errors, then do this. But there's only so many things you can account for. And
Mm.
it ended up in a really, really fragile, I would say, workflows. And I used to be part of a team where we would have pager duty, we called it, and it was you were on. We had a lot of ingestion processes that happened overnight, um, and I would get paged at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 1 in the morning,
Holy.
if one of these processes broke, and it they broke quite often. And so again, it was the problem was just the deterministic nature of it, and it didn't actually understand anything. It didn't understand I'm clicking a submit button. I understand what submit means, right? It
Oh,
was
so
just
how would it know where to click?
uh you basically just kind of had to map it out. So it was almost you can think of like a coordinate system. Like, the button's gonna be at,
Wow.
10 across, 20 down, right? It's gonna be 10 over from this certain thing. So it was all
Yeah.
relational to what was on the page. And that's why I mean if anything on the web page changed, it would break. And I think we all know web pages change a
Oh,
lot.
yeah. I mean, a designer is just thinking from a UX perspective, oh, we should move this button up or to the left, and that
Yeah.
breaks your entire process.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
insane.
Yeah. It was great at the time, but I think we have a better way of
Yeah.
doing it now.
Yeah, I remember some company coming up to us like in software development, like, yeah, you can use this for your testing. And it was super expensive. I think first of all, they really wanted like 100 grand, like for the basic package. And it would basically be a screen recording. And from the screen recording, just as you said, they would identify like where to click, but you would then have to tell it like what to put into which field and why when. And it's more like it's a super stringent process map that you create with that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's not just limited to the web either. I know web's kind of the biggest use case, but we
Yeah.
also used to use it for things like we would have it, do something on a server, like run a certain command
Hmm.
on a server. And again, it was the same problem. If anything changed, if there was any hiccup in the system, it completely
Right.
broke the process, right? So that was kind of the
So,
problem with RPA.
oh, so but it would do more than in all transparency. It would do more than just web, as you said. You could
Mhm.
basically use it like a remote desktop.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how we used it. And again, building the processes took a long time. And
Mhm.
then once they were built, they were super, super fragile. I mean, when I was on, quote unquote pager duty, I would get paged at least once a week, right? So one out
Hmm.
of 5 days, sometimes twice. And again, these were calls at 2 a.m. that I had to wake up, log on,
Right.
find out
What
that
was the
something.
volume, just out of interest, what was kind of the volume of going through there? Was it valuable to really do it that way?
So yeah, I mean, at the time, the company I was at, it was valuable. It was ingesting financial data, and
Oh,
I mean, it was the processes we built. Again, this was 5, 7 years ago. Like they were great processes for
ages.
the time, but again, we were limited
Yeah.
by the technology we had and the team I was on. Great, super sharp people. It was just, things change, and you can only
Yeah.
account for so many if statements
Yeah.
when you're building out a deterministic process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, things are getting better, and in the world of AI, things are moving so fast. And I remember there was like a wave coming up, like what is it, like 8 weeks ago or something like that, where suddenly AI is moving away from the cloud. You can do like a local installation of something called OpenClaw, right?
Yep.
And that of course is sort of like, oh my God, that's a solution now, right? So what happened with that? What do you think?
So I didn't experiment with it because everything I read about it said it was a security nightmare,
Hmm.
which makes sense, right? These autonomous AI agents are amazing, and they get away from the deterministic stuff we were just talking about, but it's also they're not people, right? They don't understand, right? Oh, don't share my API key publicly, or
Hmm.
don't, put it in plain text. And I
Hmm.
think there was just a lot of it was almost like it was like the pendulum had swung too far with OpenClaw. It
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
deterministic or, free reign to do everything. And I know with Vertesia, we're trying to strike the middle ground, which I think is probably the best approach.
We call it harnessing the agents, right?
Hmm.
Like giving them a defined scope in which they can operate. And part of that, and I think this is really where OpenClaw, they had like what 300,000 GitHub likes within a minute or so. But it turned out that there were huge security leaks. API keys were getting leaked. There were wrong permissioning on the projects. And the biggest problem, really, you would install OpenClaw on your local machine, and then it would have administrator access. It could pretty much do anything that you can do. And it would do that also without your supervision, right? And this is
Yep.
where some dramatic catastrophes happened, where people lost their entire work sets, which were stored on the local computer, or it would go wild on the internet and just do stuff because they asked it to do so and they gave it the authority to do so. But the agent had no guardrails, right? There was no governance, there was no way to limit it really to in a way that it would still be able to work and do the tasks that you would like it to do. And this is probably where this entire concept of running it locally, it seems very appealing, right? So I can just leave my desk, but it comes with a big toll to pay. And many people realize that. And then I think there was also like transitions of personnel, like people. The OpenClaw founder, wasn't he acquired by OpenAI? Didn't he get hired or something like that?
Yeah. Was it OpenAI? Yeah, he got hired by someone and he got paid a
Yeah,
bunch of money.
on that wave, right? On the peak
Yeah.
of that wave, and then they realize, oh wait, it's not what it seems, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So Vertesia, right? We're always seeing things through the enterprise lens. We're always trying to understand, like, hey, how can we take the latest and greatest technology, but make it useful and purposeful, and make it also in a way that enterprises can securely, safely deploy it and scale it, right?
Mhm.
So this is where I think about 3 weeks ago we started working on that, and then our CEO Eric, he came around and said, "Guys, it's ready to play with it." Did you get a chance to play with it a bit?
I have not had, besides running one workflow, I have not had a chance to play with the kind of the website interaction tools. But I will
Mhm.
say whenever Eric, says the words, it's ready to be tested. It's always an exciting time
Yeah,
at
and
TJ.
the speed of Vertigo is just amazing, right? So when
Yeah.
sometimes it's like it's over the weekend. Suddenly we have a new feature, but it's not just like a new feature. It's already been tested, and it's part of the sort of platform infrastructure that we're building. It's always supporting the bigger picture. It's not just like an island solution. And in all honesty, I mean, RPA or even OpenClaw and also agentic browsing, that's what we call it, right? It's a Chromium instance that's running in a sandbox, which is spawned by an autonomous agent. As you are having your work session with an agent, it's going to spawn that environment, which can then now securely execute all of that. And we're going to show that. I have some examples because I did play with it, so I'm excited to show that. But in all transparency, we need to understand where's the applicability for that, right? Because it's not just like, oh, this is a solution to everything now. It is more for scenarios where your existing software or website is maybe missing APIs, or it doesn't have the right APIs to perform certain functions, or where maybe you simply don't have that access, or MCP is the latest and greatest, but MCP is
Yep.
basically just for people who might have not heard about MCP, it's the Model Configuration Protocol, I think it's called. It's a USB for LLMs, so they exchange information on the capabilities of the service that you connect to, just like USB. Understanding this is a hard drive, this is a camera, this is a whatever. The same thing with MCP allows you to connect to like database services, like an image service, like a financial service, without you having to code APIs, right?
Yeah.
In transparency, RPA cannot do that. And you should always refer to either MCP or an API because it's way faster, it's way
Yep.
cheaper, and also it's very reliable if it's properly done. But still, there's like so many cases out there where websites simply don't have that, right?
Yeah, I think it's just this is just one more tool, right? That we have, right? And we they're literally called
Yeah,
tools for agents. And
yeah,
it's again, if they have an API, great. If they have MCP,
yeah,
great. But that's not always the case. And so again,
yeah,
I think what I really like about Vertesia's approach that we take is we always look at everything through a very like practical lens of
yes,
like, cool, we have this great tool, right?
yeah,
We can now browse the web, we can interact with the web. How can we actually make this work for someone, right? Because
yeah,
again, with OpenClaw, it kind of went viral because it was really cool, and I think it was one of the first times that people really saw how capable these autonomous agents can be, which again is impressive. But when you're a business and there's a lot of risk involved, you're just letting AI agents loose.
right,
That's not the right approach. And so one thing I really like
absolutely,
about what we do at Vertesia is we have these new tools come out, right? I feel like we're always on the cutting edge of what's going on in the industry. And then we find practical ways to use them in ways that are safe. So you're getting all the value that you would normally get, but you're not taking the risk, right? And so I think
right.
that's one of the things I
Very
really
well
like
put.
about our approach.
Yeah, we always put the guardrails around as I said before, we're kind of harnessing the agents so they just don't go astray. We make sure that they comply with your enterprise policy and with the security that needs to be put in place. Because otherwise, it's just like way too risky to do things like that. Yeah, so it's sort of a tool of last resort, right? If everything else fails, well, we also have this now, right? Nonetheless, it's amazing what you can do with it, and it took some testings. And also, my latest blog article on my medium.com link below is actually talking about that a little bit more detail. But I want to show you guys basically what the agent did. Allow me to share my screen and just give you an idea of how I tested this. So,
Yeah,
uh, huh?
I was gonna say I read your blog, but I haven't seen this yet, so I'm excited to see what you actually
Okay.
did.
So what we're looking at here, Johnny, is, as you know, this is Vertesia Studio. This is how we're building things in the background. And in the previous episodes of Past the Pilot, we talked about how Vertesia can now build itself. It can build applications. It can build agentic frameworks itself. But in this case, I just used straight out of the box our assistant to use that feature because it's nothing I need to build. And the first use case that came to my mind was really I want a new car, right? I want to configure a Tesla or maybe BMW, you name it. And but I didn't have the time to go to the website and configure it. So I thought like, hey, let's see how our assistant does that. So I said like, hey, I want to let's configure a new Tesla. What do you need from me? That was a prompt. It started it all, right?
And that's all you
So
gave it?
And that's what I gave it. Yeah, this is my
Okay.
prompt here, right? This is my user input. You can see here. What do you need from me, right? So it came back right away. Hey, there's these different models, X, Model 3, and so on, Cybertruck. What do you want? I said, yeah, great, Model X. And then any color preferences. Yeah, you choose your proof. You surprise me, right? I didn't want to be deterministic, right? I wanted the agent to maybe pick up on something that's interesting. And it started to work. And this is now interesting because we not necessarily showing all of this at the UI level when you're a user, but now we're looking at the back end. And this is really interesting to see how the Vertesia platform starts calling all these different tools here now, beginning with a web browser to go to Tesla.com. And then starting to understand the design of the website which is another tool, a browser action. So it's basically, as I said, it's a Chromium that's starting in a sandbox environment, and then it starts fetching stuff. Or so I thought it would do, but it ran into issues. It ran into a security issue here. It got access denied. And reality is that many websites out there today are secured and protected by CDNs, content delivery networks, such as Akamai, such as Cloudflare. And they, of course, have a detection for robots, right? They don't like robots because robots are not people, and they can do a lot of nasty things. Not everyone as benign as we are here at Vertesia, but there's a lot of mischief happening out there. So Akamai blocked us, right? But the agent identified that very quickly, right? And as opposed to, and again, coming back to RPA, just trying and failing and retrying and refailing and doing it all over again senselessly, this agent identified the issue and it said at some point, like, hey, dude, I'm not going to try this, right? Because Akamai totally blocked me out. Tesla will not allow that. It also tried different addresses from Tesla to see if I can get to the car configurator another way. I think it also tried to use different browser settings to see if it can circumvent that. But all of that basically said like, no way, I can't do it for you. However, it then went on and it did some web research, just regular search, or partially also relying on the foundational model training. So this is what every LLM out there has a base training, a base set of knowledge, which is encompassing the majority of knowledge in the world, we believe, but really also being able to search the internet, and it got me basically like a baseline for the car, a baseline for the options, right? So it said like, hey, dude, you're gonna end up at 150 grand, whatever. But the problem is we got an access denied. Here's a screenshot of the virtual browser session because all of this is happening in the background, right? The user doesn't necessarily see how the agent is browsing, but I can show you what it's looking like from the agent's point of view in just a second. So I said, oh, what a pity. Yeah, Tesla. Okay, Tesla. Okay, BMW. I'm German. I love BMW, right? So let's go ahead. Tesla website is blocking here. Why did it fail? And so on. Great. So I said, like, okay, let's do BMW, right? That's all I said. And now this is interesting. So the BMW allows us to do it, and this is now actually the way that our agentic browser, our Chromium, sees the website. It starts identifying the elements on the website, Johnny. And I think this is the difference to what you were referring to previously. It's not that you had to map out the pixels, the X and Y coordinates of where the
Right.
button sits, right?
Yeah, it looks like it's doing it it's taking the web page as it exists today, right? And then understanding the different components that it has to work with before making a decision on what it's going to do next.
Important point. It is making decisions. It
Yep.
is, it is, it is, it is thinking about what it's doing. It's surely it needs to understand the web, just like any person. It needs to start to understand, like, hey, here's for dealers and here's exterior, interior add-ons. Just coming to that site where the configurator sits, it needs to explore the website, and that of course takes a bit. But once it identified the right page in order to perform the task that I asked it, because I didn't say anything, I just said, okay, let's do BMW, right? And it inferred automatically, okay, let's configure a BMW. So I found this is super interesting to see how it actually it's compartmentalizing the different areas of the page to identify functionality and then infer how to accomplish a task.
Yeah,
Um,
so real quick stuff, just to kind
yeah,
of, I think, give some context. So if you can open that back up again.
yes, yes.
When I was talking about RPA earlier, right? So the way this would be done with RPA traditionally is it would, let's say it wanted the price, right, in the bottom right-hand corner. You would have to identify certain things on the screen. You would say, oh, right, you're going to find this MSRP as built tag or text, and the price is going to be right, two coordinates below that, essentially, is what it would do. But then when MSRP as built just changes to MSRP, well, guess what? Now it's broken, right? And now that's a problem. And so that's where I think this is so valuable is minor changes that used to completely break systems don't happen anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I did another test, which I'm not going to show here, but I send it to a Google form, and I did three test iterations, and I changed the form of the Google form to fill out three times, and it would catch up on the change of within the minute I changed it, it would understand, oh, the form has changed. I need to adjust the way I submit the form, the way I fill out, and also the information that needs to be filled out because I just told it to fill out the form, right? It
Yeah.
inferred what kind of information do you need to put in. So this is another level. This is just another level of intelligence, of autonomy, that exactly the way that we want it, again, within guardrails.
Yep.
Um, so it went on and said, okay, this is how these are all the models it found, and so on and so forth. I said I want the M5. So it then explored the zip code and all the different options. And then I said, hey, what color do you like? I said, I like orange black. And it went on and started navigating. And one important thing here that really struck me also as part of the Vertesia's resilient backend, right? So we talked about this previously, where agents will just fail, a GPT will just fail when a website is not available. It will say your error can't do, or worst case scenario, it will start hallucinating. The Vertesia platform encountered an error. It remembers everything it has achieved so far and picks up at that point and not just as a rerun, but an adjusted rerun,
Mhm.
continuing from the point where it left off in order to accomplish the task. I thought that was a huge thing where the Agentic platform now combined with this sort of browser integration
Yeah.
and the reasoning and thinking that we're seeing here is just so incredibly powerful. So it did that, it ran into an issue, and then it said, okay, here's your BMW, right? And within, I think it took 5 minutes. Here I got my BMW in the orange black I asked for. It gave me the base price, and then also good news on the interior, right? My orange black is available. So that's really cool. I promised you I'm going to show you a little bit more what that looks like on the agent side. So we already saw that one here. So here's another one. Oops, why didn't it show? Why doesn't it load? Wait, I think my session might have expired. Let's reload this quickly.
Well, I think it's also worth mentioning that the
Yeah.
different tabs you're clicking into right now, those are
Yeah.
different agents, different work streams that the
Yes.
initial agent you started uh decided it needed to help with its task, right? You didn't tell it to use sub agents as additional workers, right?
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. So these are all we call these work streams, or
Yep.
in other words, you might have read about agentic swarms, right? It's a team. It's a team that's orchestrated by the main agent, and each of these here is an individual task a processor, so to speak, which has been giving its own prompt, its own briefing, its own way what it should accomplish, all managed and orchestrated by the main orchestrator we see here. I wanted to show you more pictures. Yes, so here's the second one about interior, right? So this is where it took my decision into account. It found the right place on the website where to select orange and black, and without me having to give it any more instructions. So that's just fantastic. In the end, I got my full BMW out of this, and I was really happy. You see, it's a lengthy run. There's a lot of things that are happening in the background here, and that's also why typically we're not showing this necessarily to the end user, because it's irrelevant, but it's still very impressive to see what complexity is handled here at ease, and then abstracted to a UI level where you can just work with it, right? So that was a
Yeah.
really cool, nice use case, I thought.
Yeah, I think something really interesting is the way we handle the context window problem, where
Mhm.
right, I think Claude, most Claude models have what, I think like 200,000, 280,000 tokens.
1 million by now, no? So
Is it a million by now?
I think that's an option, but here, a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money, and
It's getting
either way,
really,
right?
yeah,
The context window, even if it's right, even Gemini 2.5 has 2 million, right?
yeah,
But that context window fills up really, really fast. And so I think what we see with these types of workflows that always impresses me is how they can run for a long period of time, right? And they use subagents to help manage the context window because each subagent has its own context window. And then they also do the checkpointing, right? Where it gets to 80% of its context window, it pauses, it summarizes everything it's done and condenses it down so it can keep working. And again, that's when people think about agentic AI, I think there's all these little nuances, right?
yep,
That a lot of people don't think about just because it's such a new technology. But to run a long, complex agentic workflow like this is a lot of there's a lot going on in the background, right?
yeah, yeah. There's a lot happening, and also it's a lot of tokens, right? Um, but that's another story, another topic, maybe for another past the pilot.
Yeah,
Um, okay, but this is one use case. Another one I found really interesting. So have you ever used trends.google.com?
a long time ago, a
Hmm.
long time ago. Yeah.
It is still one of the major sort of first indicators, especially when you're running like a small business and you
Mhm.
don't want to deploy like a big marketing agency and a social media monitoring and stuff to just figure out like what are the best keywords that I can use for my website, right? In order to stand out in the noise, not calling it search engine optimization, but finding the best keywords. Google does
Mhm.
it in a very selfish way, of course, because they want to sell those keywords to you. So the,
Yeah.
the whole trends.google.com is around figuring out what are the trending keywords, and then also telling you how much they are worth, right? So you
Yep.
can you can use them on your website and buy them and actually buy ads with those keywords. But there's a huge problem with it. They don't really have an API yet. There's like an early alpha. Yes, it's 2026. This website has been around for more than 20 years. There's an early alpha API that you can subscribe to or apply to, but it's not open yet. So but my case was like I have a little astronomy shop. I'm personally into things like telescopes, watching the stars and stuff like that. So I thought like, hey, what if my website I wanted to have the 15 best words for SEO for search engine optimization. So just ask trends.google.com, but I wanted the agent to do it for me and use the actual website to do it. So do not just rely on, again, foundational LLM knowledge or do a uh, web search on Google, whatever. I wanted it to use the website. So I said, like, okay, go ahead and use trends.google.com to do it. And it first had to maneuver around some of the problems of 429, which is a model problem, a 200 error, some of the errors, but eventually it came around it, right? And started doing it. And then it really came back with the best research and keywords for my little astronomy shop, right? Ranking them by score. So around the topic of a telescope, giving me 176 and so on. Rising related queries. And we're going to look at what Google Trends does in a second, but
Mhm.
just these are the outputs. And from all of that, it then inferred the actual best trends, the best trending keywords that I should be using in order to promote my little small business here, right? And they're also giving me some key insights, right? What is really interesting here, an RPA, even if you did it, first of all, an RPA would have been totally overwhelmed by the different outputs that Google Trends will generate, right?
Mhm.
Because the website itself, the output is changing, right? In design
Yep.
and length, whatever. And also it comes with a number of things. We would just go there, trends.google.com. And let's say I'm looking for astronomy. Oopsie. And you see, there's so many elements here that an RPA would just fail with, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And what is really interesting here, I didn't just say like, give me keywords. The agent started conducting analysis on the trend itself.
So it was
right?
actually pulling numbers from the graph.
It was pulling the numbers from the graph. It would take into account other rising queries which are related. It came up with, of course, keywords which it inferred based on the context of astronomy, right? But then it did all of this. And now let me show you a little bit what was happening here in the background. And again, coming back to showing you what it did. So again, it started identifying the different components of the website, plugging in the terms it inferred. The LLM inferred the terms. Then our browser, Agentic browser, kicked in, pushed those terms into the Google website, started searching for them, and then analyzing the results after seeing what came back. So this here, then an annotated version of that. And I need to jump a little bit through them here to get like to an interesting one. So, and this one here was a super interesting one. So this is stargazing, right? And stargazing actually, a normal process would have come back and said like, oh yeah, stargazing, it's a trending term, use it, right? But the problem is when I put in stargazing here, and this is now the difference to an agentic sort of a smart browser, stargazing. The problem is that the trend that comes from that is related to the music industry. There is Miles Smith stargazing. It's a song title, right? And it's
That's
trending
the top one. Yep.
because
Top.
there is a song, right? Stargazing
Ah,
song, which might not be in my own interest to advertise for that song, right?
yeah.
Because I'm not catching the people I want to catch. So the really interesting thing here is that the agent caught that and identified. Let me see if I can find it. Stargazing. So it caught that here. It says
Ah,
like,
yeah.
hey, this is not relevant to your astronomy shop. This is a music artist, right? Song lyrics, this is not relevant. So again, it's an intelligence combined with an agentic framework for the resilience and a smart inference, not just an RPA clicking and giving you results, which would have been a challenge in first place, but it's also reflecting upon the results before it gives them to me. And this is just mind-blowing. And this is such a simple example, Johnny. I thought like, holy moly, how, right?
Yeah, I mean that kind of blows my mind because again, I'm not familiar with all the keyword stuff, and so the way I look at this is the agent did it better than I would have done it, right? Because
Yeah.
I would not have picked up on the nuance of the song, right? I would be like, oh yeah, stargazing, right? Looks good. So I think I think what's cool with Vertesia is we have the kind of I think you called it the harness earlier of like the infrastructure around all these agents and all the tools, and then we can take the intelligence of the models, right, and plug them in. And as the models get better and better, they get access to our really sophisticated tools and infrastructure, and it allows for use cases like this where, right, this this agent essentially realized that this would be a huge waste of money if you were to use this keyword, which is just I mean, again, blows my mind. My mind
Yeah.
is blown every week here, but again, this is just the latest instance of
And
holy
then,
crap.
and all of this is baked into a platform that's just ready to go, ready for production right away. There's no experimentation necessary. We don't do staging, development and staging and then production. Everything we do is already production ready right from the get-go. Because Vertesia is built as an enterprise platform with all of that in mind. So when we release something, it's ready to be used at scale at enterprise level. Johnny, this was, I think, a really interesting session today. I just want to, for anyone who's interested in the topic, I'm going to put the link to my latest blog post about exactly that problem, why the web doesn't have an API. Now your agent has one to browse the web and dig into a bit deeper into the topic we talked about today, and then also into the use cases. So if you're interested in a little bit more, seeing around that, how that worked, what that did, check it out. Past the pilot. This was episode number 5. I can't wait for the next one, Johnny, because every week, correct me if I'm wrong, we have
Every
we
week
have
it's something
great,
exciting and new.
right? So we can't get enough at Vertesia. It's just so fun to work and also to see how our personal ways of working are constantly evolving into a very powerful way of still using our skills and experiences, but now working at a whole new abstraction level and putting all of that to work. And with that, Johnny, thank you very, very much. And
Yeah.
I can't wait to see you again next week or earlier and work on the next use case with you.
Sounds good.
Have a good one. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.